Good afternoon and welcome into Two-Man Game here on ClaibsOnline.com. I'm Matthew Roccio. That is Bob Ramsey, and we're going to talk some basketball here for about 20-25 minutes here. And the big thing we're going to hit is some SLU basketball as we're right in between two games. On Wednesday, they beat up on Tennessee State, and on Saturday they face off against SIU. The Salukis, going to be a tough game anytime they come in. I saw that this is the 60th matchup between these two schools. 32-27 in St. Louis's favor, a little bit closer than maybe you would expect, Bob Ramsey. Always a good game. I know this was a long-time series that has now been a little bit more intermittent and interrupted, but always fun when the Salukis come in to face the Billikens.
Yeah, the record, in fact, as you put out the numbers, I was trying to think for a second, wait a minute, are we behind in that series? Because it's such a good rivalry. And the Salukis are traditionally very good, and they're always competitive in the Valley. And we've had some magnificent games. I mean, some tremendous games over the years. And so, yeah, it's I'm surprised it's not dead even.
Absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit about that matchup in a little bit, but first we have to talk about, obviously, the game against Tennessee State and the performance from Yuri Collins. We got to talk about a 19-assist performance last year, and look what Yuri did for us. He gave us a 20-point or 20-assist performance to talk about this year. That was absolutely a maestro performance. We talked a lot about it on Twitter. You specifically gave your perspective of what was my favorite assist from Yuri. I'm actually going to go find – they didn't put it out originally the night of, but somebody has compiled all the assists. I'm going to find the video and put it out for everyone. But our favorite one had to be the one – it was the 16th assist of the night. Gibson at this point had finally gone from looking for a shot to hunting one inside, cutting across that Tennessee State zone, and he just rifled one underhand with a little bit of spin on it, and Gibson just came across the defender on the baseline and caught it in stride and finished with a layup. I mean, that was just 1 of 20, but it was easily my favorite, and just an incredible performance from Yuri Collins overall.
Yeah, me too. Two things on that. On first of all, the physical, the functionality of, okay, that was an underhand pass. Was it a hot dog thing? No. As the ball came up in his dribble, if he waits to give it a two-hand pass or even brings it up and throws it, traditional baseball pass, it's too late. That was the moment. And that's part of his brilliance, that he sees the instant that the window's open before it closes again. And that's what I loved about it after I had a chance to look at it a dozen times. Because in real time, I saw it as a magic trick. In real time, Travis Ford was right in front of me. And so I saw the ball come out of his hand. It disappears. And then I see it. It's like it time traveled. Or like in Star Trek, where you
transport.
You transport. It's like it transported into Jimerson's hands and laid it up and in, which made it mind-boggling. And then I saw it in real from the end angle and saw what a great pass it was. It really was a terrific moment, and there were a number of them when you have 20 assists. But if you had to say pick out one pass to send around everybody around the country to see what's emblematic of the 20 assist night, I would choose that one.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And just overall, just talking about, St. Louis throughout the entire game, it really was an impressive second half performance in the way that they were able to shift. Travis has talked multiple times. He talked about it at halftime. He's talked about it now in the post game and after practice today about all the different defenses they were showing, and they really tried to settle into that zone, I think, late in the second, because it was successful in taking away the jumpers and the outside shots from a guy like Gibson Jimerson. But then St. Louis did what you have to do in that situation, obviously, and they just started cutting like crazy. They were getting feet in the paint, and that was so crucial. And obviously, when you have a guard like Yuri Collins, who in those split-second moments, it doesn't matter where the ball is, he can just snap a pass off, and his vision is so incredible. I just thought it was a perfectly executed game plan. And when the way Travis talked about it today, talking about pulling back on calling a lot of plays from his perspective, he said Wednesday was one of the games he's called the least plays of the entire year because of the defensive switches, which tells me that there was a lot of that tells me the players were figuring out, listen, if we're going to beat a zone, we got to be aggressive. and we saw that. We saw them being aggressive, and we saw Yuri consistently find them. I just thought overall it was an incredibly well executed game plan in the second half by the players.
Yeah, when you talk about Travis's point that the players are making adjustments, I've always been told that when you have a player coached team, meaning you have a player or players who know how to make it work, you eliminate the communication lag time, and it allows you to get into things and adjust quicker. And in particular, against the zone, Javon Pickett finding those seams at the elbows and the free throw line really cut up the zone pretty well. Tennessee State stayed committed to denying Jimerson the ball, and I don't blame them. Hey, you got to prove we're not going to let this guy drop 25 on us. Mm-hmm. That's a reasonable position to take if you're going to play the Billikens. But what they couldn't do, and they were trying to, what they couldn't do was slow Collins down. And that allowed Pickett a 3 straight 3 riff by Perkins, and it just allowed all those other things to happen. So you could take one thing away, but you couldn't take anything else away for any considerable amount of time.
One of the big takeaways from that game, I think, had to be the management of the minutes and then the resulting play of the big men, specifically Francis Okoro. We talked to Travis today after practice, just looking forward to Saturday in this commentary. The early hook, if there's an early foul, is still going to be in play. If you get an early foul like that, you're coming out in the first minute. If you don't, you're going to be out there for about 3 or 4 minutes. But overall, I think Francis Okoro really responded well defensively to that early hook. He didn't let any other dumb fouls. As soon as he got back in, he got the most blocks he's had this season while playing 6 or 7 minutes below his season average so far. I was a little worried about the mentality aspect of knowing that early hook's coming, but it seems like after that happened, he was able to bounce back. I was fairly impressed by that, and the same thing with Jake Forrester. He knows as soon as he gets an early foul, he's getting pulled too. I'm interested to see how that strategy from Travis could maybe affect those guys' offensive and defensive rhythms. But credit to Francis Okoro. In the first game where Travis was really employing that hardcore, he bounced back and got into a defensive rhythm and was a big part of them in the second half.
Yeah, your job is to put your players in a position to be successful. And because it's got to be about the team. And this is kind of a shot. I'm being a smart ass to you. But you can't go with the NBA mentality that it's all about the stars.
That's fair.
And if you're not getting what you need, you got to make a change, not as a punishment. See, that's a number of folks on social media who are great fans looked at it automatically as a punishment. He wasn't doing what he's supposed to do. Let's get him here, talk him through it. Then we can get him back in and he can perform and be back in a position to be successful. Oh, you got to let him play through it and keep making mistakes and hurt the team, especially when you were behind and they were behind early. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think any coach is above being critical, but you weren't being critical. You went and asked the question and he explained it to you. Yeah. And that's what you got to do, though. You've got to find a way to put your players in a position to be successful. And when they need help, no, it's not punishment. Come out. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out and get you back into the game where you can contribute.
And two things that I think there's also an aspect of putting your players in the best position. He doesn't want to, I think, overexpose Momo either. And now he's been really
solid. He's just a kid.
No, and he's been solid in the minutes he's been played, and he was solid on Wednesday night against Tennessee State. And he'd gone to his third 5 by about the 5-minute mark. Yeah. But I don't think he wants to expose Momo. So it's another thing where he doesn't want to put him in a position where he can't succeed this early in his career. And just because Francis and Jake, who are supposed to be the older, more veteran players, aren't playing the game the way they're supposed to. So that's part one, which I like that move. And then part two is clearly I think it worked because not only was there a defensive change and a lack of fouling from Okoro, and while still having that aggressiveness on the defensive end, it transferred to the offensive end, which at times has been a problem for him. Sometimes he goes up too light. Sometimes he goes up with a layup when he should throw down a dunk. And we saw him dunking in the second half. And I think it carried over to this offensive game as well, which I think is crucial because St. Louis isn't as good as I think they could be about consistently feeding Okoro down low. I think they'll do it once or twice in a called play setting, but then they get away from it too many times. And so him staying engaged, like a big man staying engaged, like we always talk about, I think that's always something to look at with St. Louis and see how he's doing. To see him do it on his own without needing to get fed the ball and coming in the second half kind of cold, only playing 6 minutes in the first, that was I think a huge performance by Francis Okoro on Wednesday that we haven't really been able to talk about.
Yeah, it was a great response. And he realized what he had to do to stay on the court. On the Momo thing, Mohamed Osise, I don't want to disrespect him. Everybody does call him Momo, though. He's not ready for heavy minutes yet. And you can see a guy sometimes being just left at the end of the bench and never getting in. But it shows that the staff is getting more and more confidence in him through practice and those sort of things, that, hey, Jake and Franco are having trouble getting involved the way they're supposed to. They got foul trouble. Let's get Momo in there, mix it up a little bit, get his feet wet. And that's a luxury to have him.
One other thing I talked about with Travis today, we mentioned this on one of our early pods in the season because Travis had mentioned it at practice, and it was speeding up the half-court game, and I've already mentioned this a little bit today, speeding up the half-court game by him calling less plays and letting the offensive players like Yuri call the offense. And that has been something they've been doing. His comment on it right now is it's working to speed up the half-court offense, undoubtedly, but he's not so happy with the efficiency coming off the switch so far. And he intimated on Wednesday night that later in the season, he might call more plays as he works to get more guys shots in certain situations that he's not worrying about now. But it's been interesting to me that he's let it roll when maybe the efficiency has been a problem, because I think he has so much confidence in Yuri and Gibson and Javonte to lead this team, and Fred and Javon. I mean, it's such a veteran team in the first place. But it's interesting to me to see that they've stuck with it, because I feel like Travis has had a propensity to start things off a different way in the non-conference schedule and then maybe revert back to his comfort in his more comfortable bubble once the conference starts. And obviously we haven't hit conference play, so they could get completely changed. But I'm interested to see how that continues to go. Do we continue to see the pace get faster or stay as fast as it's been? And do we see the efficiency go up? Or maybe do we see maybe around conference play, the reins come back, them slow it down, but maybe an uptick in efficiency?
Well, man, I don't even know how to respond. There's a lot of stuff going on there in your comment. You felt like you've seen that in the past, but remember, conference teams have 2 months of video on you plus past history.
Yeah, it's not even a shot against them.
It's not that maybe your players aren't doing it. You're getting defended by teams that know how to defend you, and to shepherd your team through that. I've personally not got any indication that Travis doesn't want to score 90 a game. I mean, he wants to score. So how do you do that and still have integrity with the way you're doing it? By that, I mean defensively and not just jacking up crazy shots.
Yeah, and again, this is kind of on the heels of him talking about the offense hurting the defense at times this year because they're taking shots that they're not expecting, and then the transition is bad. Right. And so I think the efficiency is going to be a big thing we see Travis harping on kind of here as they close out the non-conference schedule. And speaking of that, we did mention Gibson Jimerson a little bit earlier. We talked about Tennessee State holding him back a little bit, stopping him from getting some of those looks. I talked to him after practice today, and I was fascinated when I asked him, what are teams doing this year to, hold you back, getting certain attempts? How are they trying to slow you down this year? And he said they're actually not giving him as much attention this year because Javonte's back. And I thought that was a fascinating answer because he's still the leading scorer, but I think it's clear there's been parts where teams have put so much focus on him that SLU's just, played it more simple, which is put the ball where the defense isn't. But I thought it was fascinating that from his look, there are things that defenses did to him last year that they're not doing to him this year. And he actually thinks his three-point looks have been more plentiful. And so I think we saw an outlier against Tennessee State. That's just a zone against that's just the way zone
is.
Extended
zone, yeah.
Yeah, you can't unless you're feeling hot, you're not going to try to shoot over it. And so I think that might have just been an outlier, but it was fascinating to me to see him break it down that way.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that relative to the Tennessee State game. Um, uh, Frequently, historically, somebody goes to his own. Your deep jump shooters are going to get a chance to go off, but Tennessee State extended the zone
Mm-hmm.
beyond the 3 point line and really got after the shooters um, in particular Jimerson. Now, in the second half, I'd like to hear what his thoughts and coach's thoughts were on how Perkins started to get open looks. And probably it was because Tennessee State had to start making adjustments because Jimerson wasn't content yep, okay, they're guarding me, I give up. He started making the back cuts, and Uri
Mm-hmm.
started finding him. I think we talked about it before. Maybe I talked about it on radio, but what Uri and Gibson are doing this year that I hadn't really noticed last year is Uri coming way over on the same side as Jimerson, making it an almost impossible pass. So Jimerson is running away from Uri. Uri's passing the ball through traffic to the baseline, and it has to be perfect timing as opposed to when he's at the top of the key or just to the right of the key, and he can go right to the cutter coming to the ball. Now the cutter and the ball are going both toward the basket. The timing's got to be absolutely perfect, and it has been. It's
Yeah,
been amazing.
yeah, I see what you're talking about. Usually, you think about a baseline cut. How are you beating your man? You're probably thinking you're probably throwing it both to the. Let's say he's cutting from the right side. You're probably throwing it to the right side of both his man and your man. But in your situation, you're throwing it to the right side. He's coming from the middle over to the left, and then he's throwing it to the outside of his man, and then the inside of Gibson's man. So the difficulty is crazy. He creates this little angle by going towards him. And I actually asked Gibson because we've noticed the kind of nonverbal communication where Gibson knows to go on that one. And they talked about it a lot in the preseason. What I've been noticing, though, is they have a wrinkle to it where if teams start hedging that, he will fake it and then bust it out because they figured out the baseline last year, the baseline cut. And he went and Gibson said him and Uri were talking in the preseason this year, and they said, listen, teams are going to be watching for that this year. We have to figure out a way to know when I'm just going to fake that and bounce back. And so they figured it out because I thought they would use against Tennessee State. Tennessee State didn't overhedge it all on the other backdoor cuts, and so they kept beating them with the cut. But watch it through this entire year. If they beat a team early with that, look for them to fake it and him to pop out for a three. And it's so much fun to watch.
Well, that was going to be my next point. I agree 100%. And I try to think about it. If I'm scouting the Billikens, what am I trying to do? You see on tape, video, it's neither, it's digital, but you see, your coach still calls it film.
Yeah.
You see what they're doing. You say, okay, we're not going to let him do that. But then to be to that spot, and he fakes it, now what are you going to do? Well, now you're in big trouble. And I think those are the things we're going to see coming up. And it's the chess game that goes on between game plans.
Let's talk a little bit about SIU, the Salukis. They're a tough team. They're a really good team when it comes to actually making shots in the paint. They're one of the top 2-point shooting teams in the entire nation. They're also one of the better defensive teams in the nation. We talked about a lot of good defenses facing off against the Billikens this year. We just talked about Tennessee State throwing them a lot of different looks and how it slowed them down for a minute before they really figured it out. But Auburn, Maryland stopped them, and they've faced off some great defenses. How do you see this matchup between the Billikens and the Salukis?
Well, I think the Billikens, I think it becomes a mental game and not to get frustrated because SIU will go old school and slog it down if they need to. But they also have a couple undersized interior guys that can really make your life miserable. Damask is he's a guy that will take a 6'9" or 6'10" guy and just cut him to pieces. And so, we go back to our bigs, Okoro and Forrester. Maybe this could end up being a game where you go small and Pickett gets him. I'm not predicting that. I haven't heard that, but I'm just seeing these kinds of wrinkles, to use your word, of strengths. How do you combat it? Because that kid, that Damask from SIU, he's a piece of work. He is a difficult matchup.
Damask, when asked about him, Travis said earlier today, he goes, legitimately, when it comes to fours, he is one of the best, if not the best four we're going to face all year. As good as any other four we will play the entire year. So that tells me big Fred Thatch game, big Javon Pickett game defensively. And maybe this is gonna have to be a continuation of what we saw Wednesday with Francis Okoro as well as a help side defender. This is obviously a game they can win. Can the offense kind of get back into a more efficient track? Obviously, when you have Yuri commanding the offense, I have no doubt they're going to score 80 points. The question is, like you're saying, if they can get a little bit more efficient and knock down some of these shots and take some smarter shots. I think the shot quality's, at a 5, and it could be at a 7 more realistically. I really think this could be a solid game for the Billikens. It could be a good sign of how they can maybe attack a really locked in veteran defense.
I'm going to do the typical media thing and go with my wild card. He's been my wild card every game so far until he breaks out in one of these 25-point games, which I know is coming, and then I'll be able to pat myself on the back. Typical media trick, because people forget what you say.
Lean on it.
This obviously could be a Sincere Parker game because of what you do in the middle. You may have to go smaller. They're going to guard your two main shooters in Perkins and Jimerson. It could just be the opportunity game that Sincere Parker needs to explode.
Again, keep calling it. Eventually, it's going to happen, Rammer. I believe in both you and Sincere Parker. One of the special things that's going to happen tomorrow at the game, by the way, it is 3 p.m. down at Chaffetz Arena. If you want to get yourself some tickets, it's going to be a great game, including a halftime remembrance of Rocc Majerus. Rammer, obviously, anytime you got to watch Majerus from your perspective, I have to imagine it was a fascinating way to watch basketball be coached.
Pure genius. And people say, what do you mean by that? Majerus would come up with game plans and absolutely orchestrate games. It was really amazing, the beautiful mind. And I'm referencing specifically the movie with Russ Crowe.
Okay.
The Beautiful Mind. If folks saw all the mathematics stuff in the movie written on the windows and the glass and everything, on the road, you typically you're at a hotel and you get one of the banquet rooms. It's a smaller room, but enough room to feed your team and all that.
Mm-hmm.
You would go in, and on all 4 walls, completely covering it, were those big, I guess they're 2x4 kind of sheets that come off the easels.
Oh, wow.
The big easels you draw on, real big. All 4 walls completely covered with plays, defensive principles, scouting report. And so every time they met, every time they ate, every time they were in that room for the 2-3 days, that stuff was already up there. A guy who left nothing to chance. Everything was with a purpose, and everything you do, you had to do it right, that there was a specific way to do it. That's legendary about Wooden talking about the right way to tie your shoes. Rocc Majerus would talk about the right way to do everything to set a screen. No, you're 3 inches too high on that screen. That's supposed to be here.
Wow.
There was a way to do everything, and it had to be executed. And then the other part of the genius was in the orchestration part. The best illustration, go back and look at the year that the Billikens played Memphis in the NCAA tournament. Josh Pastner was the hottest young name in college basketball. He was the anointed one. And he got into that game, and Rocc Majerus took him apart and took the team apart. The kid was completely over, and he's done well. He's got a good career. I think he's at, what did you say? He's at Georgia Tech.
Yeah, Georgia Tech since 2016.
Hey, it's a big program. He earned it. He worked his way there. He was the next thing coming. He came into the Rocc Majerus realm, though, probably a couple years too soon to be ready for it. And somebody go back and look at how that game was orchestrated by Rocc Majerus. It was a thing of beauty.
Absolutely, and they're going to honor Rocc Majerus in his memory. They're going to have some family, friends, former players on the court down at Chaffetz at halftime. So again, 3 p.m. game time. Get down there. It's going to be a fun game between the Salukis and the Billikens. Like we said, the 60th matchup between them. Salukis can try to claw one back against the Billikens. Let's change pace a little bit here. Remember, I just have a couple quick NBA notes, then we're going to get out of here because Jordan Goodwin continues to have just a great, solid season for the Wizards over his last 10 games. He's averaging 7, 4, and 4. Here's the better part, and also little asterisk. He's averaging 50. He's shooting 54% from the field. He's shooting over 40% from the 3-point line, but still, he's still a 63% free throw shooter. And it breaks my heart because if you can be a 40% 3-point shooter, you have the stroke in you, but that 62% is going to be something that annoys NBA teams as he gets further in his career. So I hope I hope that one bugaboo of his can finally turn around because everything else we know about him, the scoring, the assists, the rebounding, the defense, I think he's at like 1.7 blocks plus steals combined right now. Even the efficiency as a shooter now from the field, it's all there. That's just the one bugaboo still. But I love what we're seeing from him, and I love what the Wizards are doing. They're giving Bradley Beal something to actually play for. Kristaps Porzingis is looking healthy again, dominating some big men. The Wizards have been a lot of fun to watch this year.
Yeah, well, that's my club now, without question. I'm a terrible scout, and someday we'll talk about my poor scouting skills. Right. I don't know what Jay Good's ceiling is. I have no idea, but I know he's earned every bit of it. Get a look on Twitter, folks, if you want to see. I don't know if you saw it, Rocc. Jay Good was mic'd up in practice.
Yeah, I saw that.
Really fun.
It was awesome.
He's got the unbelievable knack of combining unbelievable hard work ethic and joy. Yeah. For most of us, hard work, what? Joyful? Get out of here. I just want to go take a nap. Leave me alone. He combines top-notch work ethic and joy, and joy in playing the game. You have to root for somebody like that and I mentioned the scout thing because I don't know what's going to happen to him, but a lot of NBA teams didn't know either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he's even with the free throw thing, he's looking like he's going to be able to carve out a solid NBA career for multiple years, especially with the way defense and 3-point shooting just matters so much. I mean, he's got that right now. I mean, shooting almost, I think it's 42% right now on a couple threes per game. That's huge, clutch kind of things that every NBA team is going to need at all points forever, as long as the game looks like this, and the game's going to look like this for a while longer. And so I love what we're seeing from him so far.
I know you're getting ready to go to an NBA game soon. I was just talking to my radio partner, Earl Austin Jr., Billiken Hall of Famer, Lindenwood Hall of Famer, and we're going to see Goodwin play in mid-January when the Billikens go up there to play George Washington.
That's awesome.
Can't wait.
One other little thing, because we talked a lot about the Frenchman Victor Wembanyama, and earlier this week, NBA Twitter erupted when they caught on to what's been going down in Orlando, as there is another 7'2" kid who's bringing the ball up. He's shooting threes. He's dunking over people because he's 7'2". He's pulling down crazy rebounds. All this stuff, and that's Bol Bol, the son of the late NBA shot blocker and 3-point extraordinaire Manute Bol, is on his second team. He was on the Denver Nuggets for a while. I hoped he could catch fire there as I watched a lot of Nuggets game. They never had enough minutes for him, which isn't surprising. But he's down in Orlando. Mo Bamba got hurt. It gave him a window, and he's completely taken it. He averaged 2 points, 2.9 points and 1.9 rebounds per game last year. He's averaging 14 points per game this year, 7 rebounds, and he's pulling up from 3. He's taking the ball as soon as he gets a rebound. He's going coast to coast. He's hitting floaters after he carries the ball over people. By the way, I don't think I've ever seen anything funnier than a guy with like 9-foot arms do a like step over, because it's just like no one can touch the ball. It looks illegal because literally no one can touch the ball when he does it. It's just like he's playing keep away from a bunch of little kids. It's the funniest thing in the world to me. It looks still kind of goofy. He's still got the fact that he's 7'2" and super skinny. That just makes him look awkward. But he's scoring and he's looking good. And, you know, it's kind of a fun thing going on in Orlando right now.
Positionless basketball was going to include 7-footers, and not to just always circle back to the Billikens. That's why we're so excited about Zhang coming from China at 7 feet, 7'1", whatever it is. And he's still growing maybe, so who knows. And I've seen the video. He's got handles. He's got step-back jump shots. The game is continuing to evolve.
Absolutely. And again, and we throw it back again to the slew. It goes back to Kelly Thames, saying, I'm Kellen's going to be 6'9", but Kellen's going to be able to play like a guard. And we've
Yes,
talked about how his
he
ability to be a
does.
point guard all the way down to, potentially if he puts on some muscle, being able to guard other fives because he's 6'9", because he's 6'8", 6'9". It's versatility, and it's the way basketball is going. And for me, it's a blast to watch because you're going to have you never thought you would see 7'3" players consistently hitting threes. And yet here we are. And at the same time, it's happening at the same time when a guy like Giannis doesn't ever take threes and is still dominating the league. It's
Right.
Everyone thought it was going to get to a point where it was just jump shooting and no defense, and it's clearly not the truth. And that just makes me happy. So if you're ever randomly scrolling, or if you're on ESPN Plus looking for a college basketball game and it ends and you see a random Orlando Magic game, give it a watch because they are endlessly watchable. Franz Wagner, who they got as part of the trade with the Bulls when they shipped Vucevic up there, he's a blast to watch. It's a great fun team to watch again. Give them a chance if you're just flipping around one day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I'm seeing, and I know we're going to be talking about it. The Lakers are already talking about making moves, and
Tim Legler says best case scenario, everyone's healthy. They're the 9 seed in the West. Holy, that's bad.
That's bad.
Yeah.
Really
So
bad.
I mean, even if Anthony Davis plays better and LeBron keeps, is able to find the fountain of youth a little bit and still go for like 28, 9 and 7, I still just don't see them again being anything. I agree with Legler. I'm actually surprised. I'm going to be surprised if they're competitive in the play-in, and I will be absolutely unbelievably shocked if they're anything higher than the 7th seed.
And we keep talking about Doncic and Giannis, but isn't the best player on the best team almost always the MVP?
Yeah, almost always.
Well, who's that? It's Jason Tatum.
Jason Tatum. Yeah, the Celtics.
Four losses.
Good Lord, was I wrong about that one? Not only do they have 4 losses, they're the most efficient offensive team. They're the best 3-point shooting team.
His game is elevated.
Yeah, they turn the ball over the least. They lead in like 4 other categories. They have one of the best. They have the best net rating. They have one of the best relative net ratings, which means compared to the rest of the league, their net rating is so much better that it could be the best relative net rating since they started tracking it 40 years ago. Wow. That's how much better than right now they are than the rest of the entire league. That's unbelievable. And by the way, Marcus Smart has gone from a career 4.6 assists and last year having 5.2 to assisting 7.7, getting 7.7 assists per game this year.
Watch.
That's insane. And also his efficiency has gone up as a shooter, and his defensive numbers have barely come down. If it wasn't for a guy like Bol, and if he doesn't keep it up, I think Marcus Smart's like a sneaky
comeback
most improved player of the year, because you don't see a guy in his 7th year jump 2 assists per game like that as a point guard. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So it's just starting it's just starting to heat up a little bit in the NBA and starting to watch the trends.
Absolutely. And there's going to be plenty more NBA to watch and talk about here on Two Man Game. We're going to have some slew to talk about as well. Again, they play tomorrow at 3 p.m. down at Chaffetz against the Salukis. Rammer, thank you so much for joining me today here on Two Man Game. Before you go, tell us a little bit about Royal Banks of Missouri.
Royal Banks of Missouri, where better service means better banking. 60 years now. 60 years in the banking business in our area, in St. Louis, in Illinois, in St. Charles County, and in Northeast Missouri. It's Royal Banks giving you the hometown feel in each and every branch. Royal Banks, again, where better service means better banking. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
There it is. Thank you so much, Bob Ramsey. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
As one of St. Louis's largest veteran-owned companies, St. Louis Acura knows what it means to serve. As we head into the holiday season, St. Louis Acura is collecting Toys for Tots for the United States Marine Corps and a clothing drive for local military charities and churches. Each donation can earn a gift from our boutique or a discount on a vehicle service or car wash. Please help us help others this holiday season, and thank you for helping St. Louis Acura become one of the area's top 50 fastest-growing businesses for 2021.